Regulation. I feel like we might have mentioned that before. Regulation, regulators, regulation, regulation, regulators, regulation. It's almost like it's a big deal. Alright, so hands up if you get sick of talking about the future all the time. Yeah, it's hard in crypto, isn't it? We spend so much time discussing potential, what could be, what might be, what should be. The problem is, the way things are right now is full of uncertainty, and that of course creates challenges as well as opportunities. But it's still hard not to get frustrated that we don't often have a clear idea of where exactly we currently stand. The people in charge of making the rules for us, the regulations, need to do better. That is a key theme to emerge from our Crypto Rising event, so we're going to give you the lowdown on exactly what came out of that event from some of the most important voices in the space. This sort of stuff is really vital if you're trying to understand, like I am, like we all are, what is happening and perhaps more importantly, what hasn't happened yet. So, because we know how much you love being asked questions, here's another one for you. What does the future of crypto regulation look like? There's obviously not a straightforward answer to that, but Forkast has really tried to give a conversation about it some airtime, and perhaps there is no more important one in crypto right now. So we've gathered together leading experts from around Asia to get their opinions on the shifting landscape. And let's be clear, it is a landscape that is shifting rapidly. The Terra Luna collapse back in May might just be the big cause. In the aftermath of it, there's been a real big push from authorities to try and write some better rules for the sector. Back at the start of August, US politicians suggested a bill that would give Commodities Futures and Trading Commission oversight for most of the market. Australia has just announced fresh plans for establishing crypto regulatory frameworks, and elsewhere, the Monetary Authority of Singapore is expected to imminently reveal details of its latest plans for crypto regulation. There's a whole raft of questions really to be asked about all of this, of course, and Forkast's Carolyn Wright is going to wrap up just some of the attempts to answer them.
Sean Lee of the Crypto Council for Innovation kicked things off, explaining why the issue is such a big deal here in Asia.
With a median age of about 32 years, Asia has a very young and diverse population that has driven a high adoption of digital assets and mobile payments. And especially over the last 12 months, many of the alternative financial services from kind of DeFi and play to earn platforms are gaining lots of momentum.
Senator Andrew Bragg said Australia had been in a very strong position following the inquiry he chaired, which presented recommendations to the previous government in October last year. However, he reckons the new government needs to get its skates on with putting details together on the sort of regulation required, rather than commissioning more inquiries.
The fact is, unless you are prepared to put some meat on the bones here, and what I'm talking about is putting a draft law out there or putting something out there, as has happened in the US with the Lummis Gellibrand bill, then you're not going to have a ticket to go to the game. So I think the loss of momentum here will be very measurable. But thankfully, we have a system in Australia where we don't rely upon just the government to do their job. We also have other legislators that can help fill that role if they're not prepared to.
Caroline Bowler of crypto exchange BTC Markets reckons there is some value in the Treasury Department's plans to prioritise token mapping.
If anything, it's when I talk to members of, say, the NFT community or other communities outside of just pure crypto trading, that perhaps we can see a benefit to this token mapping piece then, because there's real concerns within, say, the NFT world that they would somehow become a financial product with perhaps more onerous conditions placed on them than if, they were viewed as perhaps a utility or, any other type of product. So, I mean, we don't yet know how to the frame of reference of what this is going to look like, this token mapping exercise. But if I was to speculate, if I was to put finger in the wind on this, my best guess would be that they're going to look at and examine how one Bitcoin does not serve the same purpose as one Ethereum token, one ETH, or it doesn't serve the same purpose as an NFT token, for example. And so, the expectation is then that they will come out with some very broad-based buckets, as I like to say, in which we can allocate and then put appropriate regulation around it.
Senator Bragg thinks the next 12 months will be key in determining whether Australia consolidates its position or takes a step backwards. Over in Hong Kong, the Securities and Futures Commission is launching an anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing ordinance, or AMLO, next month. It will introduce a new licensing regime for virtual asset service providers, or VASPs. A prior consultation paper suggested limiting trading to professional investors. That's people with a portfolio of at least 8 million Hong Kong dollars, a whopping 1 million US dollars. Some firms chose to leave the city as a result. However, Angelina Kwan of Stratford Finance thinks a new regime could change that.
The licenses currently that are being envisaged does not specifically limit any type of advisor person right now. So I think that remains open. The licensing regime right now says that if you are a virtual asset service provider, you need to get licensed. And I think that openness to having that discussion, hopefully, will keep going, and the SFC will be more open in that. There are already discussions of exchanges that have left Hong Kong to come back to Hong Kong and get licensed.
Moving over to the Lion City, Singapore has been seen as a crypto hub for Asia, but authorities there are very cautious, with applications for licenses to operate in the city taking a long time to process. However, change could be afoot, with an update expected from the Monetary Authority of Singapore on the next part of its Digital Services Act on Monday. Hassan Ahmed of crypto exchange Coinbase says it's not clear what that may contain, but he thinks the focus may be shifting.
I do think that Singapore does, have real aspirations to be a global crypto hub still, and everything that we're still hearing from the regulator and industry conversations give us, cautious optimism that all of that intent is still in place. But with some of the recent, contagion that sort of happened in the markets, I do think that where the conversation is going is, it was a lot about AML in the beginning. And now I think we're starting to see the conversation and tone shift towards consumer protection. And I think we're seeing this across many, many jurisdictions, not just in Singapore.
So what do our experts think is the biggest issue for the future of regulation in Asia?
For me, it's the horse is bolted, retail clients are investing, you cannot ban it, it's not going to work. We just need to put proper safeguards in that provide the necessary amount of protections without smothering or patronizing crypto investors throughout the world.
For me, it's that regulators that are striking that balance between some level of protection while allowing for innovation and new kinds of use cases to emerge will see this linkage between a healthy local protected market and the benefits of what the Web3 ecosystem and sort of those kind of technology inflows will come around. So that to me is going to be the balance that allows any jurisdiction to win.
As well as products and tokens and an understanding of them and clarity being put out, because there's this discussion of security tokens and utility tokens that needs to be cleared. And then the final discussion point would be tax and other things pulling back investors from considering digital assets as a product of the future.
Policymakers who have not considered cryptocurrency will discover it very soon if there are a spate of consumer protection scandals and problems in their jurisdictions, and so they'll have to turn their mind to it at some level.
Of course, our experts had a lot more than this to say. You can check out the event in full if you head on over to Forkast.News. In Hong Kong, I'm Carolyn Wright. Forkast.
Well, the world of blockchain is a siloed one. There's thousands of blockchains around the world, but of course they're not all interoperable. One company, however, is looking to try and change that by creating an internet of blockchains. They're building a system which will allow blockchain developers and users potentially complete freedom over how and what systems they use. And that is the focus of the latest edition of Word on the Block. Forkast's editor-in-chief Angie Lau sat down with Ethan Buckman, who's co-founder of Cosmos, to get the lowdown.
So the idea behind Cosmos was to really prioritize this problem of sovereignty, what we call sovereignty, which is the ability for the users and developers of an application to really be sovereign over how that application is run, the infrastructure it's run on, and to give each application its own blockchain. So rather than having many applications as smart contracts on a single blockchain like Ethereum, each application can have its own blockchain, or what we call an application-specific blockchain. And those blockchains can still be interoperable with one another using standard protocols like the one we've built, IBC, the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. So it's really about giving application developers sovereignty, giving them their own blockchain, and yet still having them be interoperable with one another. So sovereignty and interoperability, that's the heart of Cosmos.
Make sure you catch the full show, that's out on Monday. That is it from us for this episode. Like and subscribe to this video, hit that notification bell to get more content like this. There is plenty more and it is all incredibly useful, I promise. Let us know your thoughts as well on what's happening in the comments and what you would like to see more of in the future.